Hello, I'm Pete Torriello.
And I'm Maureen Torriello.
Welcome to the Sonic Boomers Podcast. One of the things that we've noticed in recent episodes is there's a lot of interest, especially amongst fellow baby boomers, in nostalgia and in memories. And I've just come up with the thought that maybe the generations that followed us, I don't even know anymore.
X,
Y, Z, millennials. I don't know anymore. They seem to be a lot less emotional
or sentimental
or nostalgic. Do you agree?
I agree. They just
come in a little closer to your mic, huh?
They seem a little bit more like living in the moment and not thinking ahead and not thinking behind.
A friend of mine who is 39 now, I think, said to me, you guys, you boomers, are all about places. You're about like people getting nostalgic over their old homes. And oh yeah, well that's, Grandma used to have us over and in the house on Pearson Road and there's all these memories. And he's like, my generation, we really don't give a damn about the building. We don't give a damn about the location. We care that we were together.
Okay.
We care about the experience.
Right.
We are more an experiential, if there is such a word, people. Yeah. We're not into nostalgia over places and things.
That kind of makes a little sense to me. And in some degree, I kind of could lean that way because I'm not so much about things, but experiences. Like I walked away from our old house without really too much of emotion, but there are certain things that I am sentimental about. So I'm kind of like on the cusp, I think.
I had more emotion about leaving the old house.
I know you did.
Not the neighborhood.
Right.
The neighborhood I was glad to get out of. But about the house itself, yeah, it was a little hard for me when I finished cleaning up that last night that I was in there and I locked the door behind me for the last time. It was rough.
It didn't bother me at all. It was kind of like I was glad to be moving on. It was just a place.
Yeah. It was really hard for me.
Yeah.
I finished cleaning up and I sat down on the steps and I said goodbye.
Yeah. Yeah. But, that's, I guess it's just different with different people, different personalities. I don't know if you can make generalizations or not, but going back to your original question, I do think, though, that there seems to be a less sentimentality as each generation has come along. I don't know if that will prevail. I think some of it is the youth. As you get older, you start to appreciate things from your past a little bit. They become a little more dear when you realize that maybe you can't get them anymore or you can't recreate those experiences anymore. People have died, people have moved, people have been estranged. And I think those things become more precious as you get older.
Like even with the music. How often have you heard me say, we will hear songs in our generation that were done, our music was like in the 60s and 70s.
Right.
And we will get nostalgic over it.
Yes.
And the music that the kids aren't the kids, that the younger people are listening to today, I can't picture them 30 years from now, 40 years from now, being nostalgic over this stuff.
I can't either, but maybe they will. Who knows?
Like our college radio station says that they play the hardest rock.
Right.
And they have, to me, it seems like they're playing the same song over and over every time I turn it on. And I know it's different, but it's always the guy singing in the scary monster voice.
I know.
I hate everybody. I hope you die. That. And it hurts to even do that. I can't even do that for long. I mean, I don't know how they do it. But I can't imagine anybody being, our age in their late 60s and saying, hey, remember, I let you all die. Blah, 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 blah. You son of a bitch, I hope you die. Blah, 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 blah. It's like, I can't picture a bunch of old white-haired people sitting around.
I know, but
doing this.
But when our age came along, our parents were brought up in the big band era and swing music and jazzy kind of things, and they thought rock was the abomination, and they could not understand how we could even like this stuff. To them, it was all boom, boom, boom with the drum and the guitars, and I think each generation has a harder time identifying with the new stuff because it's not part of your wheelhouse.
Doing that voice really really did me in here. Wait a minute. Okay. With that in mind, where we're going with this show is we asked our viewers, our listeners, to submit to us things that they are nostalgic about that just don't seem to be around anymore.
Right.
Or at least not in our neighborhoods.
And not like with any prevalence, like it used to be these things that people suggested were very commonplace.
Common stuff that has just
maybe now you might see them once in a blue moon, if at all. So
before we start that, I do want to acknowledge we got a really nice note from out of the blue, it seemed, from a Julie. Mm-hmm. And she wrote to us, I guess she sent it to us on the Sonic Boomers Facebook page, right?
I believe so.
And she wrote, I just started listening to your podcast a few days ago. I'm up to episode 9 now. Well, you've got some catching up to do, Julie, because I think we're at 90-something episodes now. Since COVID began and since my husband and I are in our 50s, oh, you kids, I work in healthcare at a walk-in clinic that tests people for COVID all the time. We have real grave concerns about going to church, so we watch on YouTube now. I am intrigued about your transfer to the American National Catholic Church. We live in Middle Tennessee. Very few Catholic churches anyway, and certainly no ANCC. I do not at this time feel like leaving the Catholic Church we grew up in, but definitely digging a more progressive church and less traditional. God bless you both, enjoying the podcast. So thank you, Julie. We really appreciate your writing to us.
It was very nice to hear.
Very nice to hear, and catch up to the rest of the shows.
You got a lot of
catching up to do. Okay, so let's go with what some of our listeners wrote about the things that they remember and that they miss.
Okay. Well, my cousin Michelle wrote a whole thing. Let me see. She's like, Mr. Softy. Not Mr. Softy. Well, not just Mr. Softy, but also the Good Humor Man in his white truck. They also had Hoffman's soda delivered and a shoemaker around the corner. We used to get our hopscotch heels from him. Now, I remember that when we played hopscotch, the replacement heels that they would put on a shoe, or like they're kind of rubber or whatever, they made excellent like markers for your hopscotch. Mm-hmm. And to have one of those was really like top notch. Sal's Delicatessen, sawdust on the floor. Get this, 4 Kaiser rolls for $0.25. And she says, that's how I swallowed the quarter, by the way. When she was a kid, she actually swallowed a quarter. The greengrocer fish market that had a bathtub-like tank for the live fish. And she said, oh, my God, so many memories. The real candy store. When we lived in Germany, there was a truck that came around with different brands of beer you could buy by the case, too. And where I worked, there was a guy that came around with a truck about the size of an ice cream truck with boxes of fresh fruits and vegetables. And you could get a kilo of cherries for roughly $1, 2.2 pounds. So that's pretty cool.
That is. We also heard, well, you have some more. They're good.
Well, if you want to.
Okay. All right. We'll go back and forth.
Yeah.
Okay. We heard from Denise, and Denise says, remember friends having milk boxes on their front porch as a child,
But
never seen milk delivered in them.
Oh, we had a milk.
We had Borden's.
It went through a couple of iterations. We had, I think, Borden's, and it became Tuscan. I'm not sure. Alderney was one. But we had the milk box for the longest time, and the milkman would always deliver the bottles, and they were in bottles.
Mm-hmm. The big, thick glass bottles.
And I remember you could get pasteurized and unpasteurized milk, and the unpasteurized you had to shake up because the curds, it would separate, and like the heavy stuff would be at the top, like almost like a yogurt or something. And if you didn't shake it up real good, the milk wasn't blended, and that was kind of gross.
And I think they had wasn't there like a paper cap on the milk bottle?
Yes, it was like a foil. Well, the outer one was foil, and then there was like a cardboard one on the inside, so it was like double sealed.
We heard from Janine, and she says the Good Humor truck. Mm-hmm. We had, growing up here in Madison Park, we had Carnival.
Oh, okay. No, we didn't.
Most of them were Carnival. Once in a while, you saw Good Humor. I don't recall seeing Mr. Softy here in the park. Maybe later, but not both. When I was growing up.
Mostly Good Humor. Mr. Softy came around a little bit, and there was a little bit of competition between the two ice cream men. And Mr. Softy tried to buy our attention by offering prizes. And he'd give out a balloon or one of those plastic rings, or the bubble gum or something. And the Good Humor man, he didn't buy into that, but he was like really on time. Mm-hmm. You knew exactly when he was coming. You'd be waiting for him. And if you went to the wrong corner trying to get an early jump on it, he'd send you back to your house. This is not your corner.
Let's see. Oh, it's your turn.
Okay. Anita out in Queens, when she was a toddler, they had a Seltzer guy come around. Also, David says he had an Eggman until the early 90s.
I remember having Seltzer because we had family in Brooklyn, mm-hmm. over in Bay Ridge. And we didn't have him here, as I recall.
Yeah.
But I remember that they would get the big Seltzer bottles over in Brooklyn. Nancy says, fish truck. You put a sign in your kitchen window, and he would stop at your house.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's convenient. Kevin says, Dugan's Donuts. I do remember Dugan's coming around. Mm-hmm. The Fuller Brush Man, who would sell like household items and stuff, cleaning products.
We had Dugan's would come, and he would bring, they had these wonderful little pies. They were like fruit tarts, mm-hmm. and they came in little tins with a nice crusty pie and then a filling.
Yeah.
And they were so good. We would get, every time the guy would come, mm-hmm. we would get those.
And Good Humor again was mentioned. Mm-hmm. My cousin Marilyn up in Massachusetts, she said, I can remember being at Ma Connor's, that was my grandmother, in Orange, and a man drove up pulling a tiny 2-horse merry-go-round. I do remember those people, like these little carnival rides would come, and I don't know, it was cheap enough, I guess, like 10 cents or something, and you could take the ride. Mm-hmm. To that same memory, my grandmother, she used to have a ton of different vendors come. Everybody on the street, it wasn't just her. But when I was little, I used to say, oh, Ma's men are coming. And everybody thought that was really cute, But she had a peddler, she had a knife sharpener, an ice guy. A guy picked up her laundry. I mean, it was endless.
Yeah, but she didn't like the ice guy. She thought he was a little cold. You see what I did with that?
You're so cute.
They just keep popping. The ideas keep popping. We heard from Nancy wrote twice, and she said the fish truck, and she says, remember the trucks that came by in the summer to spray for mosquitoes? The fog filled the streets. I wonder how toxic that was, because I remember clearly the truck would come down Princeton Road, and the fog would like billow from behind. It was poison.
Yeah.
And there would be kids riding their bikes right behind the truck in the fog.
Yeah.
Because it was cool to ride in the fog. And I've thought about it, and I didn't do it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I knew it was poison, and if I tried to do it, you know, my mom would have smacked me back down in my seat. You know, you're not going out there, Peter. But I remember kids, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder how many of them developed
down with anything,
health
yeah.
problems after
Wow.
riding behind that thing. So it was like DDT or
Oh
something.
goodness. See, this was more rural, like than where I grew up. We didn't have anything like that.
Yeah, well,
They
we
didn't
get a lot
spray.
of mosquitoes here because
Yeah.
and it was a lot more wooded around our area
Right.
back then.
Livia says milk delivery, which we were talking
Right.
about previously. Vicky says Charles Chips. I do remember,
Remember
seeing
Charles
them.
Chips here.
Bissell brushes. She said my mom would buy hair brushes from them, which I've never heard of.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if there was a Bissell or a Fuller Brush person. I remember the name Fuller Brush.
Yeah.
But I don't remember if we actually had a guy that came to the house to peddle them.
I remember a Fuller Brush catalog coming that you could order from, but much like the Sears catalog. And that's what I remember. It would have things like mops and brooms and things like that. I don't think hairbrushes were part of the thing. As I remember, it was like household cleaning products.
We have another fish truck mentioned here from Denise. Jensen's fish truck from South River, driving around selling fresh fish on Fridays. Fruit truck. Denise, are you trying to make me stumble with all
Fresh
of these
fish on Fridays for fruit.
This alliteration here? Fresh fish on Fridays. Fruit truck driving around in the summer. Okay. You know what I remember?
What?
Frank's Radio and TV. Now, those of you who grew up here in Madison Park, how many of you remember the truck for Frank's Radio and TV? He had like a big horn speaker
Okay.
on each side, one at the front, one at the back, and he would ride in the truck and read announcements. So it would be like, you know, Friday night, St. Bernadette's, 8 o'clock, annual bazaar, pony rides, hot dogs, wheels of chance, win a prize, St. Bernadette's Church, Friday night, 8 o'clock, be there. And he would ride all over the
Wow.
development and do this announcement. And I remember him coming through every so often.
Yeah.
Vote line A all the way, Democratic Party, Harry Messenger running for mayor. Vote line A all the way. You know,
I do remember political announcements
Yeah.
coming around that way in my neighborhood, but not just local happenings. Let's see. Shelley says she had a potato farmer drive his truck around town, and we would go out when we heard his bell and buy produce off the truck. And Mike says the whip truck, traveling kiddie ride, much like the merry-go-round that we mentioned before.
Louise says good humor, and of course the good humor bells. Now we have the little truck that just went through the neighborhood today.
Yes,
That plays what,
music.
Turkey in the Straw or something, and it goes hello. Hello. And you always know when it's coming because you hear the hello, and then the song starts playing.
The first time I heard that hello, I was like, what was that? What was that? Kind of startled me.
We heard from Gern, Gern, hope I'm saying that correctly. I grew up in Jersey City in the early 70s. I was born in Jersey City, Gern. In the early 70s, we had vegetable vendors, knife sharpeners, Mr. Softy, Good Humor, Italian Ice, and kiddie rides.
I remember Italian ice. It wasn't a local vendor. We would go to a place, but where they made the Italian ice, especially the lemon ice. And I remember going to a place, it was Newark, I think, in Vailsburg, and they had, you go up to, it was just like a little storefront, like really narrow, and they had the fresh lemons there, like piled, like mountains of them. And when you get the lemon ice, it would actually have the lemon peels in it, like, a little bit of the rind. And it was real lemony. Very good.
Good.
I'm done.
Oh, you're done. Okay. Let's see. We've got Rick, who says paper boys. Nancy, my brother was a paper boy, and that's how we got our dog. Someone threw a puppy out of their car around the firehouse.
No.
in 1967, and my brother brought him home. We had him for 16 years.
Wow.
And let's see, we got a few more here. Rick says payphones. In fact, I think I heard on the news last week that the last payphone was taken out of New York City.
I think they were talking about that, yes.
Lorraine writes milk machines.
We were just talking about those too. Before there were, we didn't have like a 7-Eleven or a Quick Check or anything like that. If you needed milk late at night, you'd go out and you'd go to a milk machine.
Yeah, there was one on Cheesequake Road by the gas station, which I think is TJ's Gas now. And when I was growing up, that was a Gulf station.
Right.
And the milk machine used to be right there.
I remember there being one when I grew up in the Dunkin' Donuts, too. Or in one of the bakeries, if not the Dunkin' Donuts, I'm not sure. And a big treat, and we didn't get it every time, was they had the little containers of chocolate milk that you could get out of this milk machine. But, you know, money was tight. We didn't always get it, but that was a treat.
We also heard from Rick, who remembers transistor radios.
Mm-hmm.
I went through, I still have one of the old I think it was like a 1970s transistor radio, but I went through a bunch of those as a kid.
We used to keep trying different ones to get just the right sound and just the right one that would pick up the right stations.
What I found out was I had one, I remember it was an Essex brand. It was a black one, it was Essex, and it said 13 transistors. And I figured, wow, that's a powerhouse, because a lot of them back in the day only had like maybe somewhere between 4 and 6, maybe 8 transistors.
I have no idea.
So I thought 13. But I had read that in some cases the transistors weren't all wired in there. Or they were fake transistors or something. And because you could, if you knew what a transistor looked like, you could take the back off and count them. But somebody had written in one of the websites that I followed that they weren't all real transistors.
So they just picked a number that sounded good.
It sounded more powerful.
Wow.
Yeah. In some cases, not all.
Yeah. I remember the other thing. We used to have this peddler. He had a school bus, and he had all his fruit on there, and he would come around. And most of the people would go out to him, but when he would come to my grandmother's house, he came in with his pad and pencil, and he'd sit down, and he'd like, "Okay, Miss O'Connor, what do you want? I got good. My apples are good today. You're gonna like them, yeah." And they would negotiate what he'd come away with the list, and then he'd go out to the truck, and he'd come in, and they have those bushel baskets that you see, like I don't know what they're made out of, like straw or something, and he would bring in the stuff in the bushel baskets, all in brown paper bags, and you'd pay him, and he'd bring it right into the house.
For some reason, I have it in the back of my mind that somebody used to come around with a traveling electric chair.
What?
A traveling electric chair.
Why?
Just as a morbid curiosity.
Ooh.
I have it in the back of my... They didn't do any demonstrations or anything.
I would hope not.
But I seemed to... It was like a truck. It was like a truck. And you went inside, and then there was like a mock-up of the electric chair or something in there.
Oh, that's morbid.
Maybe I watched one too many gangster movies.
I don't know. I've never heard of that, but that's weird if that really happened. I don't know.
So is that all of our
That's it.
all of our memories?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you all so much for participating in our poll.
And before we leave, after we do our trivia, I might have a question for you for a future podcast.
Okay, for me or for our listeners?
For our listeners.
Okay, good.
Oh, I was going to do it at the end.
You were?
Make them laugh.
Okay.
Listen to the bitter end.
So that means it is time now for our Boomer Trivia Contest.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
Now, we all love Betty White, and, she's been in numerous TV
You just
shows.
read her book.
I just read her book, a fantastic book. I can't think of the name of it, what the name of it is now. It's Betty White, You Asked Me, or Since You Asked.
Since you asked, yeah.
Wonderful book.
Well, you said when you finished it, you were genuinely sad that it ended.
Didn't have more, because it's all like anecdotes and stories, and each chapter's only like a page or two, and fast reading and really delightful. So anyway, this question is about Betty White. And she had a show called The Betty White Show.
Mm-hmm.
So what mythical TV show did The Betty White Show center on?
What mythical TV show did the Betty White Show center on?
In other words, on The Betty White Show, she was doing a show. It was like a show within a show, I guess.
Wow. I do not know.
Undercover Woman.
Really?
Yeah.
I have no recollection. Well, that too these days. I have no recollection.
I didn't either.
And you know, I don't want to be bothered editing that out of the podcast.
So you can have that delightful moment. Oh, brother.
Yeah, I have no recollection.
You'll say that word carefully from now on.
Yeah. No, I just don't remember that. Okay, well, here comes yours.
Okay.
Okay. What is the translation of the mafia term capo di tutti capi? Capo di tutti capi.
Is it like head of all heads or something like that?
I'm going to give it to you.
Okay.
Boss of all bosses.
Okay.
But close
That's
enough.
close enough.
Close
All
enough.
right.
Hey, listen, thank you.
Wait a minute. We got them to listen this long, and we promised them a question, and now you want to just railroad through. That's what you do.
Yes, it's what I do.
Anyway.
Yes.
We were just hitting back and forth ideas, and this is something that we'd like you to weigh in on. I don't know if it'll be our next podcast or an upcoming one. If money was no object, and this could be whether you are married or thinking about married, whatever. What would your ideal wedding be? Or if you are married, would you have changed anything if money was no object? Write into us at the Sonic Boomers page on Facebook. Also our email.
The Sonic Boomers at AOL.com.
Right.
And if you're watching us on YouTube now, you can probably comment below.
So,
And the question again is?
If money were no object, what would you do for a wedding?
All right. Now, we're done with all of our business.
Yes.
We want to thank you for watching and for listening to the Sonic Boomers podcast. And we'll see you again next time. Until then, I'm Pete Torriello.
And I'm Maureen Torriello.
And now it's time for you. Yes, I said you. To go out and make some noise.